Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sadashiva-Samarambham Shankaracharya-Madhyamam Asmadacharya-Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Sadguru Charanaravindaabhyam Namaha. Brahma Sutras, Chapter 3, Pada 2. Sandhyadikaranam. Sandhye Srishtihi Ahahim Nirmataram cha eke Putradayascha Maya matram tu Katsnyena Anabhishvyakta Swarupatvat Suchakaschahi Shrutehe Achakshate cha Tadvidaha Parabhidhyanatu Tirohitam Tato Hyasya Bandhaviparyayau Deha Yogatva Saha Apim Tadabhavadikaranam Tadabhavo Nadishu Tashrutehe Atmanicham Ata Prabodha Asmat Karmanusmriti Shabda Vidyadikaranam Sayevatu Karmanusmriti Shabda Vidibhyaha Mugdhe Ardha Sampaddhidikaranam Mugdhe Ardha Sampattihi Pariseshat Ubayalinghadikaranam Nasthanatopi Parasya Ubayalingam Sarvatrahim. This is the 11th Sutra in the second Pada, third chapter, 329th running Brahma Sutra. So we saw the general introduction to this Adhikaranam in the last class, Ubayalinga Adhikaranam, and the general analysis of the first Sutra also in the last class. Now let us do the word analysis. First let us do the running meaning. The sutra is Nasthanatopi Parasya Ubayalingam Sarvatrahi. Nasthanatopi Parasya Ubayalingam Sarvatrahi. Parasya na. Brahman doesn't possess Ubayalingam, two types of nature by itself we have to supply. Apisthanataha, even due to its location. Sarvatrahi, it is revealed uniformly everywhere. It is revealed uniformly, we have to supply. Everywhere as Nirgunam Brahman, that also we have to supply. This is the running meaning. Now let us see the significance of the words. Nasthanataha api. Sthanam means a particular location. And even because of particular location, Brahman does not get the attributes of the locations. And Vyasacharya has in mind a particular portion in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and Shankaracharya also points it out. This is based on a Brahmanam called Madhu Brahmanam. It's one of the very popular Brahmanams in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad called Madhu Brahmanam. And in this Brahmanam, the Upanishad says Brahman is located in every object, in Prithvi, in Vayu, in Jalam, and not only in the macro objects, but even in the micro objects, Brahman is located. That is what this particular Brahmanam says. And this mantra is Iyam Prithvi Sarvesham Bhutana Madhu Asyai Prithvyai Sarvani Bhutani Madhu Yaschayam Asyam Prithivyam Tejomayaham Amritamayah Purushaha Yaschayam Adhyatmam Shariraham Tejomayaham Amritasya Purushaha Ayamatma Ayamevasaha Amritamidam Brahmodagam Sarvam. Brahmedagam Sarvam. Brahmedagam Sarvam. So this is the second chapter, fifth section. This is Madhu Brahmana. And there Shankaracharya points out, Brahman is in Prithvi, in earth, and is described as Tejomayam Amritamaya Purushaha. Tejomayaha Amritamayaha Purushaha. That means what? It is still pure Chaitanya Swarupam only, not associated with the gunas of the Prithvi. Therefore, the description is uniform, whether it is located in Prithvi or Jalam or doesn't matter. If Brahman is borrowing the attributes, description should have changed. But the description is what? Tejomayaha, Amritamayaha, Purushaha. It means it is not tainted by the attributes of the location. It is always nirguna. Similarly, even if Brahman is located in the Punya Papa Yukta Antakaranam, the mind endowed with all the Punya Papas and Vasanas, that is the Antakaranam, the mind endowed with all these, Brahman won't have Punyam or Papam because of association with the mind. So location does not influence the Nirguna Swarupam of Brahman. Therefore, Nasthanataha api, neither originally attributed nor attributed by contact. Parasya, parasya means param brahmanaha, for the paramatma or param brahma, ubhaya lingam. Lingam here means the swarupam, the nature. The combination of both the nature, saguna nature and nirguna nature. Nirguna, so saguna, nirguna, ubhaya swarupam, and connected with na. It is not there. And then we have to supply. Therefore, it cannot have only, it can be only one swarupam, nirguna swarupam. That's what we have to supply. And naturally, the question will be, if you say only one, why do you use nirguna? It could have been sagunam also. Like Visishta Advaitins, they say, why can't you dislodge nirgunam and go for sagunam? It is not possible because in all the Upanishads, sarvatra, uniformly, consistently, at the time of culmination, nirguna only is talked about everywhere. Why? Sarvatra hi nirgunam brahmaiva pratipadyate. Sarvatra, sarvasu upanishatsu, in all the Upanishads, he means is for pramana, emphasis. So everywhere nirgunam is talked about in Shruti, in the Vedas. Now let us go to the next sutra. Na vedatiti chet na pratyeka adatvachanat, atadvachanat. Na vedaditi chet na pratyekam atadvachanat. This is the 12th sutra, second pada, third chapter. Let us do the general analysis first. And the sutra has two parts. One is the Purvapaksha part, and the other is the Siddhanta part. And up to na vedat, in this sutram, na vedat idi chet, up to this is Purvapaksha. That is, if a Purvapakshi argues in this manner, na, it is not correct. So what is the Purvapakshi's argument? Vedat. Vedad here refers to Vedaha, here means attributes. Vedaha here means attributes. And the Purvapakshi claims that the Upanishads talk about attributes also. And how dare you say Upanishads talks about Nirgunam Brahman only? That is his question. Upanishads talks about attributes for Brahman everywhere. How dare you talk about Nirgunam Brahman? You quote only the convenient portions for your benefit. So we do have the Upanishadic statements like Chandogya Upanishad, 3rd chapter, 14th section, 2nd mantra. These are all given by Purvapakshi. Manomayaha pranaha, shariro bharupaha, satya sankalpaha, akashatma, sarvakama, sarvakarma, sarvakamaha, sarvagandaha, sarvarasaha, sarvamidagum, abhyatto vakyanadaraha. So this is the quotation from the 3rd chapter of Chandogya. Attributes are all mentioned, sarva karma, sarva kama, sarva gandha, sarva rasa, all those things. So they talk about gandha, rasa, karma, kama, all that. Therefore, Purvapakshi says the attributes are mentioned in the Upanishad and therefore your conclusions are not correct. And the question is, how does Brahman get all the rasa, gandha and all these gunas? And according to Purvapakshi, when Brahman is associated with Bhumi, the earth, it will have Gandha, the smell. Associated with Agni, it will have Rupam, the form. Associated with Jalam, it will have Rasa, the taste. And this is how Brahman is Sagunam. That is his argument. Purvapakshi's argument is this. Brahman is Sagunam. Then Vyasacharya says, no, the Upanishad never accepts that nature because in Madhu Brahmanam, it has been very clearly said, Tejomayaha, Amritamayaha, Purushaha. That is, Brahman does not take any attributes of anything, so it is uniformly Tejomayaha. Chaitanya Surupam only. Tejomaya refers to Chaitanya Surupam. Other than Chaitanyam, it does not have any attributes at all. This is the essence of this sutra. Now let us see the word meaning. Vedat. Vedat means, this is Purvapakshi's argument. Since attributes are also mentioned, Vedaha, na, your conclusion is incorrect or wrong. That is, calling Brahman as Nirgunam is wrong. Up to this is the Purvapaksha portion. Iti chet. If this is your contention, na, it is not so. So now Siddhanta, now he says, Atat Vachanat. Because the attributeless Brahman is revealed, Pratyekam, in each location. This is the meaning of the sutra. Now let us see the significance of the words. Vedaha refers to attributes, as I told, and Vedat because of attributes. Because attributes are also mentioned in the Shruti Varkyam. Who says? Purvapakshi says. He quotes 3rd chapter of Chandogya, as I just read that mantra earlier. And there it is said, Sarva Gandhaha, Sarva Rasaha, Sarva Kama, Sarva Karma, all that thing is said. And Brahman has got smell, taste, karma, kama, all that. So Vedat. So Saguna Brahma Kathanat. Nah, the Advaitin's position is wrong. This is the contention of Purvapakshi. Now the Advaitins say, Iti chet. If you say so, if this is your argument, nah, you are wrong. Why? Because Atat Vachanat. Tad Atat. Atat Vachanat. You go to Madhu Brahmanam, that is Chandogya Upanishad, 2nd chapter, 5th section, where it clearly says, even though Brahman is located in Prithvi, he does not have attributes of Prithvi. Because Tejomayaha, Amritamayaha, Purushaha. Tat means attribute, and Atat means attributeless. Tat refers to attribute, and Atat Vachanat, that Atat means attributeless. It is non-that. Atat is that. That is that. That attribute refers to attribute. Atat means non-that. It's a compound of the pronoun. It's interesting. Anyway, that refers to attributes. What attributes? Sarva Gandhaha, Sarva Rasaha, all that thing. So Atat means that refers to Nirgunam Brahman only. Vachanat, mentioned or revealed in the Upanishads. And Nirgunam Brahman alone is revealed. Even when Brahman is located in the Prithvi or Jalam or Agni, and because of contact, it won't become Saguna. Association doesn't make it Saguna. Pratyekam, in each location. Because in Madhu Brahmanam, several locations are enumerated. 13 or 14 locations are enumerated, such as Aditya, lightning, thunder, space, water, dharma, satyam, all those things. Okay. So in all these locations also, everywhere it is said, it is not tainted with any of the attributes. It is Nirgunam only. That is what is said everywhere. Now let us go to the next sutra. Apicha eva meke. Apicha eva meke. 13th sutra, second pada, 3rd chapter, 331st running Brahma Sutra. First, let us do the general analysis of this sutra. Now, actually, Siddhantin is in some trouble. What is that? The Purvapakshi has quoted an Upanishad that says Brahman has got all the taste, smell, rasa, and all that thing. And we have quoted the Madhu Brahmanam, especially 1 to 14. 14 times Tejomayaha, Amritamayaha, Purushaha is repeated. In all these mantras, it is repeated. And say Brahman is attributeless. And Purvapakshi holds on to the Chandogya Upanishad quotation from 3rd chapter and says Brahman is Saguna. So both have got Shruti support. Siddhantin also has got Shruti support, and also Purvapakshi. Now the question is, which one we should hold on to? If one is Shruti and another is Smriti, then we can say Smriti is weaker, because Smriti is derivative. But here, both are Upanishad mantras only. So which one I should hold on to? And Advaitins say, Nirguna alone should be held on to. All these, you have to keep in mind the higher level of teaching. In keeping with the Adhikari, the eligible student is not an ordinary student, is an Adhikari. That person understands the higher level and lower levels of reality and all that thing that person understands. To such a person we are telling. So Nirgunam alone should be retained, Saguna should be knocked off. Why? For that Vyasacharya says, Upanishad itself negates Saguna. And what are those places it does? There are several mantras, and Shankaracharya quotes a mantra from Kathopanishad, 2nd chapter, 1st section, 11th mantra. Manosai vedamaptavyam neha nanasti kinchana mrityoho sa mrityum gacchati ya iha naneva pashyati. Manasai vedamaptavyam neha nanasti kinchana mrityo samrityum gacchati yayihananeva pashyati. There is no plurality at all, and there are no differences also. And that too, this is present tense is used here. Even now, there are no differences in Brahman. If Brahman is taken as Saguna, differences will be there. Because where properties are there, differences will be prominent. Why? Brahman will have all the Kalyana gunas, and Jiva will not have all, will have all Akalyana gunas. And therefore, there will be difference between Jivatma, Paramatma will be there. And within Brahman itself, there will be differences. Sarva Kamaha, Sarva Gandhaha, all those things, they will all be there. There are differences, they are all differences only. Sajati Yabeda, Vijati Yabeda, Swagata Beda, all that thing we already mentioned. Therefore, where all these Vedas are there, Nana will be there. So, Neha Nanasti means in Nirgunam alone, Nanatvam can be negated. Otherwise, Sagunam Nana will be there everywhere. Various differences and all that. And there are so many other places also. Example, the Bhuma Vidya in Chandogya again. Yatra Nanyat Pashyati, Nanya Shrunoti, Nanyat Vijanati, Sabhuma. All these can be taken, and the Upanishad even threatens that if you don't listen and continue to see the differences, what will happen to you? Mrityoho mrityum apnoti yaiha naneva pashyati. Just as the mother frightens the baby that some poochandi will come, the child, if it's not taking food or child is crying, she will say some poochandi or some guy. In Tamil, we call it poochandi. I don't know what is it in other languages. The Upanishad also says Yamaraja will come to swallow you. Therefore, Upanishad dissolves the contradiction for us and says that Nirgunam Brahman alone persists. Of course, as we said earlier, this is in keeping in mind the higher level of the student. Later, Vyasacharya will come down. If one is not ready for that, he will bring the Saguna temporarily. We are going to see that also. That we will see later. But here, it is establishment of Nirguna for the Uttama Adhikari. Now, let us see the word analysis. First, we will see the running meaning. Apicha eva meke. Apicha eva meke. Apicha. Apicha means moreover. Eke. Eke here refers to some Upanishads. Directly they teach. We have to supply. Some Upanishads directly teach. Evam. Evam means in this manner. What is in this manner? Directly teach Nirgunam Brahman in this manner by negating the attributes. That's what we should supply in this manner. So this is the word meaning. Now we will see the significance of the words. Apicha, moreover, even though Upanishad seemingly contradicts by talking about both Sagunam and Nirgunam, Upanishad itself resolves our problem by negating Saguna and retaining Nirguna. And according to us, this negation of Saguna is proving that it is Mithya. Sagunam is Mithya. Whatever is negated is Mithya, and it is of lower order of reality. And Mithya cannot be taken into account and must be rejected ultimately. Then Eke refers to some Upanishads. In fact, most of the Upanishads negate Sagunam, but in some Upanishads, the negation is not explicitly done, but done implicitly. Like Nehana Nasti Kinchana. Such strong words we don't find in every Upanishad. Evam, in this manner, Nirgunam alone is the teaching. So Nirgunam alone exists and there is no Saguna. The Upanishad reveals Saguna is to be negated. Then what is the Upanishad that is kept in mind? As we said, Kathopanishad, 2nd chapter, 1st section, 11th mantra, and especially the statement, Neha Nanasti Kinchana, that we just read. And the same mantra occurs also in a different form in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. In the 4th chapter, 4th section, 19th mantra, Neha Nanasti Kinchana. Manasa, slight difference is that the words, Manasa Ivanu Drashtavyam, Neha Nanasti Kinchana, Mrityo Samrityum Apnoti, Yayihananeva Pashyati. Up to this is almost identical mantra with the other Chandogya mantra, that's right. So up to this is Nirguna alone, that is retained. And Saguna is negated consistently everywhere. Then the Upanishad feels, in the case of the unprepared student who is not an Adhikari yet, negation of Saguna may prove to be dangerous for him. Because he may drop Saguna and he will not be ready for Nirguna also. Therefore, from the next sutra onwards, we will take up Sagunam as a stepping stone to Nirguna. And Saguna is temporarily allowed for Upasana and for Karma. For the Karma Kanda and Upasana Kanda, Sagunam is temporarily allowed. Then step over Sagunam and reach Nirgunam. And then after reaching Nirgunam, drop Sagunam. So Saguna is Mithya, Nirgunam is Satyam, Saguna is Sadhanam, and Nirgunam is Sadhyam. Now, this is the development that is going to happen in the next few sutras. Now, let us go to the next sutra. Arupavat evahi tat pradhanatvat. Arupavat evahi tat pradhanatvat. 14th Sutra, 2nd Pada, 3rd chapter, 332nd running Brahma Sutra. So a further argument is given in support of Sutra 11, and this is the reinforcement of the conclusion that has been arrived in the previous Sutra. Here Vyasacharya says that Brahman has to be understood as colorless and attributeless. Colorless is only one attribute, but attributeless in general. This means Brahman is Nirgunam Brahman. And that is the central theme of the Upanishads. And the Upanishad does not teach Vedaha. And Upanishad teaches Abheda only. We have already established this fact in Samanyadhikaranam much before. So the most important argument given there was to teach a Saguna Vastu, Upanishads are not required. To teach a Saguna Vastu, Upanishads are not required. To teach divisions and attributes, Upanishads are not required. We see it every day, every moment. Saguna Brahman can be known through perception, being Paurushaya Vishaya. This is not Apaurushaya Vishaya. Also, we refer to all our lectures in Mandukya Karika chapter 3, Advaita Prakaranam and all that, where it was elaborately discussed. Pradhanam is Tatparyavate. Therefore, Nirgunam Brahman is the central teaching that should be accepted as true. This is the general analysis of the sutra. Now let us do the word analysis. Arupavat evahi tat pradhanatvat. Arupavat evahi. Here we have to supply the word Brahman is indeed attributeless. Arupavat, attributeless. Evahi is indeed only attributeless. Who is that? Brahman. Tat pradhanatvat. Since it is the central theme, pradhana means central theme of the Upanishad. Rupam. Rupam here refers to primarily the means, color, it means. And here it should be taken as any attribute in general. Rupavati endowed with attributes. Na Rupavati means Brahman without attributes. Eva and he, they give emphasis without doubt. Tat pradhanatvat. The Arupa Brahman, the Nirgunam Brahman, is the Tatparyam of the Upanishad, the central theme of the Upanishad. And the bottom line of the Upanishad teaching. And this is the central teaching of the Upanishad. This is Pradhanam. And Tat Pradhanam actually is Bahubrihi. Tat Nirgunam Brahmam Pradhanam Yasya Shastrasya. Tat Pradhanam, Shastram and all that. And Tat Pradhanatvat. Because the Upanishad Shastram have that as the main message. And if you miss out the main message, you don't get any teaching. Because one has to be clear of the main teaching, the main message of the Upanishad. Tat pradhanatvat. Actually, again, Panchami, Hetvartya Panchami. Therefore, Brahman is Nirgunam only, and there is no Sagunam Brahman at all. Let us see the next sutra. Prakashavacha avayarthyam. Prakashavacha avayarthyam. 15th Sutra, 2nd Pada, 3rd chapter, 333rd running Brahma Sutra. So a further argument is given in support of Sutra 11. And in this Sutra, Vyasacharya concludes the first part of our discussion that Nirgunam Brahman alone is there by comparing Brahman to the light. So Chaitanya Tattvam is compared to Prakashaha. And we do not talk about the source of light here, but we use the word Prakasha, which is formless and spreads over the object and reveals the object. Sunlight spreads all over the objects, but it does not take the attributes of any of the objects on which sunlight falls. When it spreads over dirty water, it does not become wet or dirty. Sunlight is asangaha, and it is not capable of taking attributes. It means Chaitanyam will be Nirguna. It was, it is, and it will ever will be Nirguna only. Since Chaitanyam is Brahman, Brahman was, Brahman is, and Brahman will be. Nirgunam only. So Nirguna Advaitam was, is, and will be forever. This is all the contention, summary of all these various discussions. So even if Brahman wants to be Sagunam, that is interesting. Even if Brahman wants to be Sagunam, it cannot become Sagunam. Even if Brahman wants to be Sagunam, it cannot become Sagunam. Up to this is the first part of the development. Then the question is, if you say Shruti consistently reveals Nirgunam Brahman, and if the central theme of teaching is Nirgunam, how can you reconcile Saguna Vakyams in the Upanishad? Because there are so many Saguna Vakyams in the Upanishads. How are you going to reconcile them? In Chandogya Upanishad mantra, we pointed out that Brahman has got Gandha, Touch, Rasa, all that thing. First of all, we say there is no Sagunam Brahman. There is no change in our position. Sagunam Brahman is impossible. And it is only a misconception in the minds of the ignorant people. Strong assertion. This is point number one. And then comes the question, tell me whether Shruti is ignorant or wise. These are all questions Purva asks. Tell me whether Shruti is ignorant or wise. We can appreciate ignorant people talking about Sagunam Brahman. Then why should Upanishad talk about Sagunam Brahman? Can we say Upanishad also is ignorant because it talks about Sagunam? Upanishad temporarily accepts the misconception of the ignorant people because the Upanishad feels that the misconception also has certain utility. Misconception also has certain utility. It is useful up to a particular level to become an adhikari. Misconception is useful up to a particular level to become an adhikari, eligible. It is needed to become wise. He has to go through karma, upasana, all those things, karma kanda, upasana kanda, he has to go all of them, deliberately accepting the human misconception. And the Upanishad says that everybody is not mentally prepared to take Nirgunam Brahman as it is being ignorant. They are to be prepared. Every mind is not yet prepared. Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampati is not with them. They are still ineligible only. And Shruti does not get angry with them when they talk of Sagunam Brahman. Shruti is compassionate to them actually. Shruti allows to go to Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda. And so from Karma Kanda, one goes to Upasana Kanda, where you replace the rituals with meditation. Then you are taught of the Jnanam, that what you believed so far is of no value. And they are taught Nirguna Brahman concept to make them wise. So whatever they had gone through in the Karma Kanda and Upasana Kanda, whatever they believed so far, that's of no value. They are taught there when they come to Jnana Kanda. They are taught Nirgunam Brahman, the concept, to make them wiser. And this realization will lead to liberation. Nirgunam cannot be objectified. One cannot try to objectify Nirgunam Brahman. You are the very subject, Nirgunam Brahman. And it is a matter to be claimed, to be wound up, and not to be objectified and sought after. If the mind does not accept, allow the mind to continue to stick to Sagunam Brahman. Do rituals and wait for the mind to become mature to realize Nirgunam Brahman. Mind does not accept that easily. So let the mind continue to stick to Sagunam Brahman. All these worships, pujas, yajnas. Let all the rituals all be done. And wait for the mind to become mature, to become purer, and then to realize Nirgunam Brahman. Veda deliberately puts into use the misconception of Ajnani. It puts into use the misconception of the Ajnanis. And therefore, Saguna Vakyas are called Anuvada Vakyas. All these terms we are familiar, earlier we have used. Saguna Vakyas are called Anuvada Vakyas, deliberately accepting misconception. Veda deliberately puts into use this misconception of Ajnani. So Nirguna Vakyams are said to be Pramana Vakyams and Saguna Vakyams are said to be Anuvada Vakyams. Start with Anuvada Saguna Vakyam and end with Nirguna Pramana Bhuta Vakyam. So start with Anuvada Saguna Vakyams and end with Nirguna Pramana Bhuta Vakyas. This is the approach of the Vedas. And Brahman is Ubhayalingam, this Adhikarana. So Brahman is Ubhayalingam with both features of Sagunam Brahman and Nirgunam Brahman. One on the basis of Karma Kanda, Sagunam Brahman, and the other on the basis of Vedanta, Nirgunam Brahman. And Shankaracharya says, we do not mind accepting both, but on one condition. What's the condition? We don't mind accepting both Sagunam and Nirgunam, but on one condition. What is that? Nirgunam Brahman alone is Satyam, and Sagunam Brahman, they are all Mithya, because it is accepted during Avidya Avastha. In fact, the Upanishad says, Yatra Dvaitamiva Bhavati, Itara Itaram Pashyati. Wherever you see Dvaitam, all those things happen. Brahman is Satya Guna, Mithya Guna. Satya Nirguna Swarupam it is. You cannot say both are Mithya or both are Satyam. Both are Satya Mithya combinations, Sagunam and Nirgunam. Now, let us see the word analysis of the sutra. Cha means moreover, and Prakashavate. Prakashavate is comparable to the light. Prakasha. And Avayarthyat. Vayarthyat, Avayarthyat, being purposeful. Sagunam Brahman is also talked about, that we have to supply. Being purposeful, Sagunam Brahman is also talked about. It's not neglected, it is not ignored. This is the running meaning. Now let us see the significance of the words. Cha means further or additional argument. The argument given here is what? Brahma Chaitanyam is compared to the light. Just as Surya Prakasha does not take good or bad attributes, Brahman cannot take the good or bad attributes of the world or the Maya that permanently stays with Brahman. Brahman cannot be tainted by the good or bad attributes of the medium. It is so because it is the nature of Brahman. It is the intrinsic nature of Brahman. Cha is the conjunction, the addition of the third argument. This is the reconciling part of the Vyasa's argument here. And in fact, even science-wise, if you see, the Sagunam portion is more only. We were talking about Sagunam only. Avayarthitvat, the non-uselessness. Uselessness. So the non-uselessness is what? Is usefulness. We can call non-uselessness as usefulness. So the sun is the center, for example, which was not accepted earlier for a long time. Nobody accepted sun is in the center. The sun rises in the morning, sets in the evening. They are all misconception. It is used for some practical usage though. Sunrise has got Vyavaharika Satyam. Practical usage it has. Misconception with practical utility is Vyavaharika Satyam. Misconception with practical utility is Vyavaharika Satyam. Sagunam Brahman of Karma Kanda, of Upasana Kanda is required for us to realize Brahman ultimately. But Advaitan will never get angry with believers of Sagunam Brahman, but only sympathize with them and allow them to continue their sadhana to ultimately reach the Nirgunam Brahman level. For the Advaitin, he won't have any dvesha with anybody who don't believe in Advaitam or who are Advaitins or visit Advaitins. Because Advaitins feel that Sagunam Brahman level is the stepping stone to reach the top position of Nirgunam Brahman level and then subsequently gain moksha, where liberation lies. So for Advaitins, there is no such differences at all. Dvaitam, Vishishtadvaitam, everything he will be very gladly willing to accept because he knows that they are all at the Vyavaharika plane. Let us go to the next sutra. Ahacha tan matram. Ahacha tan matram. Sutra 16, second pada, third chapter, 334th running Brahma Sutra. So the force of the word matra in tanmatra is to denote exclusiveness. The following sutra is the reinforcement of the conclusion that Nirgunam Brahman is Satyam and Sagunam Brahman is Mithya. And Sagunam Brahman is useful ultimately to realize Brahman, that we already said. Being useful, Mithya is talked about, but the truth is Sagunam Brahman is useful and Nirgunam Brahman is truth. We have to understand it clearly. Sagunam Brahman is useful. We don't say it is useless and should be neglected. No. Nirgunam Brahman only is ultimate truth. Nirguna Brahma Jnanam is Vyavaharika, but Nirguna Brahman is Paramarthika. Saguna Brahma Jnanam is very useful to gain the knowledge of Nirguna Brahman. And here it is said that Brahman is Chinmatram. Chinmatram, there are there are no three Sharirams and three Prapanchas. There is Brahman is only, Chinmatram only. Chityeva Sat, Satyeva Chit, Satchityeva Anandamatram also. And there is no attributes at all to Nirguna Brahman. And Shruti kept in mind here is from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, 4th chapter, 5th section, 13th mantra, that says the self is neither inside nor outside, but is altogether a mass of knowledge. Sayata, Saindavaganaha, Anantaro Bahyaha, Krishno Rasagana Evaivam Vam, Are, please now, this is all conversation with Yagyavalkya and Maitreyi. You must, so I mean, people who know the Brihadaranyaka context. Are, Ayamatma, Nantaro Bahyaha, Krishnaha, Prajnanagana Eva, Etebhyaha, Bhutebhyaha, Samuttayam, Tanyeva, Anuvinayasyatim, Iti Prajnanaganameva, Etebhyaha, Bhutebhyaha, Samuttaya, Tani evam anuvanayatim na pretya sanya astim iti are bravimiti hovacha Yagyavalkya. Yagyavalkya tells to Maitreyi. It is a lump of salt. It has neither inside nor outside, but it is altogether mass of saltiest taste only. Everywhere it is salt and salt everywhere. There is no salt stays in the top, no salt in or some other places at the entire lump of salt. It is pure consciousness. Neither nothing is inside nor outside. Everything is the same. There is no matter. There is no substance other than consciousness. And therefore, no attribute also. There is no substance other than consciousness. And because of that, there is no attribute also. If the consciousness is a substance, you have to apply some attributes to it. If it is an attribute, it has to be attached to a substance. Consciousness is neither a substance nor an attribute. That is why Sat is neither a substance nor attribute. In some other systems, they have several substances actually. For example, in Nyaya Vaiseshika system, we have seen this earlier actually, they have several padarthas, dravya, guna, karma, samanya, vishesha, samavaya, all those things we have seen in earlier in the 2nd chapter of Brahma Sutras. And the Nayayika concept of dravyam, guna, etc., as far as we are concerned, they have no meaning. Now we will do the word analysis sutra. Cha means moreover, and aha means the Shruti declares, tan matram, Brahman to be pure consciousness. This is the running meaning. And the significance of the words very simple. Shruti itself declares tan matram, tat means chaitanyam, and matram means chin matram, and there is no other substance, nor there is any attribute. It is all only consciousness swarupa. It is beyond science, it is non-material, it is spirit, and it is spiritual. So it is all these things, once we say all that thing, they all should go into our mind simultaneously. It is beyond science, beyond non-material, and it is non-material, and it is spirit, and it is spiritual knowledge. Now let us go to the next sutra. Darshayati cha ato api smaryate. Darshayati cha ato api smaryate is the sutra, 17th sutra, 2nd pada, 3rd chapter, 335, 5th running Brahma Sutra. So just to refresh in this Adhikaranam, because this is an important Adhikaranam, Ubhayalinga Adhikaranam. So in this 5th Adhikaranam, I know of each Adhikaranam is each topic. Vyasacharya has taken up an important topic for analysis regarding Sagunam Brahman and Nirgunam Brahman, because Shruti talks about both Sagunam Brahman and Nirgunam Brahman. We cannot, this is like summarizing our study so far, essentially to give the concept and also to see where we are going. We cannot accept both because these two have opposite features, Sagunam and Nirgunam. If it is Nirgunam Brahman, it cannot be Sagunam Brahman. Vyasacharya explains this confusion in a very slow manner. Nirgunam Brahman is central theme of the teaching. This is statement number 1. Nirgunam Brahman. What is the business? Nirgunam Brahman. Then Vyasacharya, he comes down a bit and says, we should remember that the Tatparyam is only Nirgunam Brahman. And there is no Tatparyam for Sagunam Brahman at all. He emphasizes that. He accepts the existence of Sagunam Brahman as unimportant entity. Yes, he accepts it, but it's not important, ultimately. In Sutra 14, Arupavati eva hi tad pradhanatvat. That Sagunam Brahman is less important. And the third statement is, Sagunam Brahman is acceptable, but it is mithya. Means what? Inferior variety, inferior reality. Sagunam Brahman is acceptable, but it is mithya only. And Vyasacharya, he conveys that it is mithya through the Prakasha Drishtanta, the example, the sutra that we just finished. And Nirgunam Brahman cannot take any attributes. It cannot take any gunas. If I say attributeless, then one will mistake that it can gather attributes during course of time. It is attributeless now. Maybe it can take attributes later. No, light cannot take attributes of objects, even though light spreads over all objects. Light cannot take attributes of objects, even though light spreads over all objects. And the next stage is what? Even though Saguna Brahman is less important and mithya, it is still useful in the beginning state of sadhana, stages of sadhana. It is mithya though. Even though it is apradhanam and mithya, it is not useless. It is useful at the time of ignorance when one wants to gain knowledge. One has to prepare the mind for which Sagunam Brahman is useful as Upasyam Brahman. Once he prepares the mind, Upanishad tells Sagunam Brahman is mithya. Keno Upanishad says, Shrotrasya Shrotram, Manaso Manoyad, Vachoha Vacham, Savu Pranasya Pranaha, Chakshusas Chakshuhum, Atimucha Dhiraha, Pretya Asma Lokat, Amrita Bhavanti. First chapter, second mantra. And third mantra, Na tatra Chakshur Gachati, Na Vag Gachati, No Manaha, Na Vidmo, Na Vijanimo, Yataitate, Anushishyat. Next mantra it is. And the fifth mantra, Yadvacha Anubhyatitam Yena Vag Abhyudyate, Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi Nedam Yeditam Upasate. Fifth mantra. All these mantras. Nedam Yeditam Upasate. Can Upanishad. Sagunam Brahman can be meditated upon. Upasate. But it is not ultimate truth. It is there. It is less important. It is mithya, but still very useful. And if there is one Nirgunam Brahman and another Mithya Sahitam Brahman, there will be no contradiction. There can be contradiction only when both belong to the same order of reality. If one is of a higher order of reality, another lower, no problem. One is of higher order of reality, Nirgunam Brahman, and the other is lesser order of reality. One is Vyavaharika Satyam and the other is Paramarthika Satyam. One is attributeless and the other is with attributes. Thus, there is no contradiction between Sagunam Brahman and Nirgunam Brahman for the reason that Sagunam Brahman is the stepping stone to reach the ultimate Nirgunam Brahman and gain liberation. Light in the Jagrata Avastha and darkness in Swapna Avastha can coexist in the same room. Person is sleeping in a room, the light is there all over, he is a daytime sleeper, put the lights on and sleeps. And he also has a dream. They both can coexist. I can have lights on and take to sleep, and yet I can have dream. I may sleep in a dark room and I can have a dream with bright sunlight inside. All are possible. Because this Satya Mithya distinction. And up to this we have seen. Now this is the summary. Up to this I want to give the summary of what we have seen, all the sutras of this particular Adhikaranam. Now we have to, because a long Adhikaranam. Now we will continue with the next sutra. Darshayati Chato Api Smaryate. 17th sutra, second part of third chapter, 335th running sutra. And the argument in support of again Sutra 11 is continued here. Here Vyasacharya says that because Brahman is Nirgunam only, Shruti has to make use of the indirect methods of revealing Brahman, because it is Nirguna. You cannot directly reveal it. Shruti is unable to make direct description because attributes are not there. The indirect method used by Shruti is called Nisheda Mukta Pramana. Nisheda Mukha Pramana. Nisheda Mukha Pramana. It is negating every attribute. The definition using the method of negation, neti of second chapter, third section, Brihadaranyaka. Whatever you can convince of is an attribute. Even the idea that it is opposed to non-existence. Even the very word Sat, you should not really use, to be honest. It is all totally attributeless. Brahman cannot be even called Sat. Asat is another concept as opposed to Sat. Any empirical concept is seen as an attribute alone. Actually, this is a very interesting section. Any empirical concept is seen as an attribute alone. Immature people have all types of attributes attached to Brahman. The knownness and unknownness, they are also attributes attached to Brahman. Brahman, the knownness of Brahman, unknownness are attributes to Brahman. Therefore, nothing can be said. And so Shruti reveals the method of negation. Because nothing can be directly said, it comes with the method of negation, neti. This is in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, 2nd chapter, 3rd, 6th mantra, which says, Tasya hai, tasya purushasya rupam, yata maharajanam vaso, yatam pandvabikam, yatendra gopom, yata gnarchihim, yata pundarikam, yata sakrat vidyutagam, sakrat vidyuteva, hava asya shrir bhavati, yevam vedatata adeshaha neti neti. Adeshaha neti neti na hetasmat iti netyatyate netyam yate paramastyata namadeyagam satyasya satyamiti pranaha vai satyam teshamesha satyam. Neti neti. And another is anya devatat viditat. Anya devatat viditat in Keno Upanishad. Anya devatat viditat ato avididaditi. Iti sushrumam purvesham yenastad vyachakshire. This is from Keno Upanishad. First section, first chapter, third mantra, first section. And then Taittiriya Upanishad, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. And then comes the ultimate question. If no guna can be attributed to Brahman, is nirguna a guna? What a question. Is nirguna is also a guna? Is it an attribute? Because nirguna is also a guna. Vyasacharya says, even we are not happy to use the word nirgunam also for Brahman. It cannot have any attribute, any word to describe. Nirgunam also, we are not happy to use that word. But we'll keep using this word nirgunam because when you use sagunam, and to negate the word sagunam, we use the word nirguna. It is only for that purpose. We are aware that we don't want to even use that word nirguna. Word nirguna will not be used the moment you don't use the word saguna. That is the argument Vyasacharya gives. Even if the moment you drop the word saguna, we will stop using the word nirguna also. If nirguna should not be used, then what you will call it? Upanishad says, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. No words. Even for thoughts, it is beyond. And in Dakshinamurti Stotram, it's Maunam Vyakya Prakatita Para Brahma Tattvam Yuvanam Varshitante Vasadrishiganaihi Avritam Brahmanishtai Maunam Vyakya Chitram Vatataror Mule Vruddha Sishya Gurush Yuvam Gurostu Maunam Vyakyanam Maunam Vyakya everywhere. Sishya Tuchinna Samshaya. No word can be used. In Mandukya Upanishad, in 12th mantra says, the Turiya Avastha, Turiyam was revealed by the word Amatra, the silence. Amatras Chaturto Vyavaharyaha. Prapanchopashamaha. Shivodvaita Evam Onkara Atmaiva Samvishatyatmanam Atmanat Atmanam Yayevam Veda. Therefore, Shruti reveals Nirgunam Brahman only everywhere. Not only Shruti reveals, all the Smritis also reveal the same. Not only it is in the Shrutis. In the Bhagavad Gita also, chapter 13, Krishna says, Nyayam yattat pravakshyami yajñatva amritam ashnute anadimat param brahma nasattanna saduchyate. Nasattanna saduchyate. Shankaracharya quotes some of the Smriti Vakyams also from Mahabharata, Shanti Parva. Maya Hesha Maya Sritta Yanmam Pasyati Pasyashi Narada sarva bhuta gunair yuktam naivam mam jnatum arhati. It says, oh Narada, you are seeing me with all attributes. Mam sarva bhuta gunair yuktam pashyasi. As though endowed with sarva kama, sarva gandha, sarva rasa. You are seeing me as endowed with all these attributes, O Narada. With all these attributes, you are experiencing me. But these are all maya srishta. All these are all only mithya attributes created by me. But do not be carried away by the saguna form and never understand me in the saguna form. Then how should you understand me? Mam evam jnatum narhati. Do not see me in saguna form at all, but know me in nirguna form. Therefore, sagunam is mayikam and nirgunam is vastavam. This is the Mahabharata Vakyam. Maya hesha maya srishtam yanmam pashyasi naradam sarva bhuta gunair yuktam naivam mam jnatum arhati. And even the word nirgunam has occurred in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also. Sarvendriya guna bhasam sarvendriya vivarjitam asaktam sarva bhrachaiva nirgunam guna bhoktrucha. Nirgunam guna bhoktrucha. This is the general analysis of this sutra. Now let us go to the word analysis. First, see the running meaning. Darshayati. Here we have to supply the word Shruti. The Veda reveals it. Reveals. Darshayati reveals. Reveals it means reveals what? The Nirgunam Brahma. So the Vedas reveal Nirgunam Brahma. And then cha smaryate. Smaryate smriti restates also. Smriti also states that. Ato api, in the same way. Now let us see the significance of the words. Darshayati. And we have to supply the subject here. Shruti. Darshayati. What shows, what reveals? Shruti reveals. The Vedic statements reveal what? Nirgunatva. And what are those Vedic statements? We gave all these references said earlier from the various Upanishads. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, 2nd chapter, 3rd section, 6th mantra. From Kena Upanishad, 1st chapter, 3rd mantra. Taittiriya Upanishad, 2nd chapter, 9th mantra. All of them, they use the indirect method. Then Chasmaryate, Smriti Granthas also reveal the Nirgunam. And what are the Smritis kept in mind? Shankaracharya quotes Mahabharata, Shanti Parva. Then also Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, 15th mantra. We already quoted all those. Then Ato Api, in the same manner. The same manner means what? As Nirguna. So all these mantras explicitly mention the Nirgunatvam of Brahman. All these things, they mention the Nirgunatvam of Brahman. We just start the next mantra and then we will continue it maybe in the next class. The next mantra, next sutra is Atayeva Chopamam Surya Kadivat. Atayeva Chopamam Surya Kadivat. 18th Sutra, 2nd Pada, 3rd chapter, 336th running Brahma Sutra. So again, this also continues the argument in support of Sutra 11 of this Adhikaranam. Continues. Here Vyasacharya says, Shruti supports the same teaching by other methods also. Nirgunam Brahman is Satyam and Sagunam Brahman is Mithya. Nirgunam Brahman is absolute reality and Sagunam Brahman is empirical reality. So these are all things again. He's just re-emphasizing all these things. And here he is saying, he gives an example. He gives an example. And what is the example he gives now? In this place, he gives the example, Nirgunam Brahman is compared to the sun. Nirgunam Brahman is compared to the sun and Sagunam Brahman is compared to the reflected sun. It's compared to the reflected sun, that is Surya Pratibimba. And Bimba is original and Pratibimba is reflection. And original sun he calls as Surya, and the reflected sun he calls it as Suryaka. So Suryaka and Surya. That is what he is telling. And what do we mean by this? Here again, we have to understand some of these concepts. Like Surya and Suryaka, it is said. Suryaka is reflected sun. Surya is original sun. So when we know the reflected sun is not real and it has certain attributes which do not belong to the original. Reflected sun has got certain attributes which do not belong to the original. Reflected sun has got attributes borrowed from the sun. Reflected sun has chalanam, but it does not belong to the original. And reflected sun has plurality. If the reflected medias are many, for example, if you put so many mirrors, there will be so many reflections. Reflected sun moves from place to place if the reflected medium moves, but it does not belong to the original. The Sagunam Brahman is unreal. It has attributes which do not belong to the original sun. Sagunam Brahman attributes belong to the Upadhi. Upadhi means the medium. Due to Sharira Trayam and Prapancha Trayam. Sharira Trayam is the Sthula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram and Karana Shariram. And the same thing for the Prapancham also. And this does not belong to the sun, the original. So that Saguna Chaitanyam is Mithya. There is no such thing called Saguna Chaitanyam. And Shruti gives Pratibimba Drishtantam in Brahman or in a Upanishad called Brahma Bindu Upanishad. That is a very nice quotation. It is giving from quotation from those things. So Nirguna Brahman is compared to the original sun and all that thing. So original. So adding cards. So what we know, what are from the analogy? What are the things we know? Reflected sun is not real. Reflected sun has got certain attributes which don't belong to original. Reflected sun has got attributes borrowed from the reflecting medium. And what are the borrowed attributes? We already mentioned chalanam. So spandana. Spandanam or chalanam, we can call it both also. If water is in movement, reflected sun also gets its reflected sun, the movement, has chalana. That doesn't belong to the original. And reflected sun has plurality. If the reflected media are many, as I told you, so many mirrors. Therefore, nanatva, chalanatva. And the reflected sun moves from place to place when the reflected medium moves, gamana. So they are all attributes of the reflected sun, which never belongs to the original. Thus, Sagunam Brahman is unreal. Sagunam Brahma has attributes which do not belong to the Nirgunam Brahma. And Sagunam Brahma's attributes are borrowed from where? Reflecting medium, called the Upadhi, Sthula, Sukshma, Karana, Shariram, Sariratrayam, and Prapanchatrayam. Reflected in the Sariratrayam and Prapanchatrayam. And Nirgunam Brahma appears as what? Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna, Virat, Hiranyagarbha, Antaryami. Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna at the individual level. And Virat, Hiranyagarbha, Antaryami at the total level. They are all Sagunam. So all reflections of one Nirgunam Brahma, because there are 6 reflecting media. What are the 6 reflecting media? Sthula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram, Karana Shariram, Sthula Prapancha, Sukshma Prapancha, and Karana Prapancha. But remember that Saguna Chaitanyam, Brahman is Mithya. There is no such thing called Saguna Chaitanyam. Thus, Pratibimba Drishtantena Saguna Mithyatvam Bodhayati. The reflecting sun or the reflecting light. Saguna Mithyatvam Bodhayati. The Mithyatvam of Saguna. Now the next question is, where do we find the example of reflection? Shankaracharya quotes 2 references. One for Suryaka. Actually, the word Suryaka that is there in the sutra, I mentioned that word. So he gives 2 quotations. One from Moksha Shastra, Yatahyayam Jyotiratmam Vivaswanaipo Bhinna Bahudaiko Anugachan Upadhina Kriyate Bedarupo Devaha Kshetreshu Evam Ajaha Ayamatma. This is a little complex quotation. There is another simple one. I like that, so I'm going to take that only. And the second one is from Brahma Bindu Upanishad for Jala Chandra, which is a straight and simple words here. Eka evahi bhutatma bhute bhute vyavastitaham ekada bahuda chaivam drishyate jala chandravat. So one is the Surya Drishtanta, another is Chandra Drishtanta, Jala Chandra. Eka evahi bhutatma. There is only one Nirgunam Brahman obtaining bhute bhute vyavastitaha, which is there in every shariram. Bhut means shariram. It is attributeless only originally. Ekada bahuda chaiva. Originally it is one, when reflected it becomes many. Like what? Drishyate jala chandravat. That is the important analogy. Like the moon reflected in the water, jala chandra. If there are 100 lakes, there will be plurality of the moons also. And also there will be gradation in the brightness of the moon also, depending upon the purity of the reflecting water. This is the general analysis, and we will go to the word analysis in the next class tomorrow. Yo vedadau swara prokto vedante cha pratishthitah tasya prakritireenasya ya parasamaheshwaraha. Sri Krishna arpanamastu. Purnamada purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Krishna arpanamastu.